People always ask me what happens to the avoidant after they push away someone who truly loved them. They want to know if these individuals feel pain, if they experience regret, or if they're simply emotionless robots moving through life without consequence. The truth is far more complex and heartbreaking than most people realize. Behind the walls of emotional detachment and the mask of indifference lies a human being experiencing profound internal devastation that they've learned to hide so well that even they sometimes forget it exists. What I'm about to share with you today will fundamentally change how you view avoidant behavior. We're not talking about the surface-level actions you can observe, but the invisible psychological warfare happening within the avoidant mind. This isn't about excusing their behavior or encouraging you to wait for them to heal. Instead, it's about understanding the complete picture of what avoidance truly costs, both to the person exhibiting it and to those who love them. The avoidant individual doesn't experience heartbreak the way you might expect. While you might cry, reach out to friends, or openly process your emotions, the avoidant experiences what I call silent devastation. Their nervous system is in constant fight or flight mode, but they've learned to suppress all external signs of distress. They've trained themselves to disconnect from their emotional reality so thoroughly that they often don't even recognize their own pain until it manifests in physical symptoms or complete emotional numbness. This emotional suppression creates a unique form of suffering that's particularly insidious because it goes unacknowledged and therefore untreated. The avoidant walks through life carrying the weight of every relationship they've destroyed, every person they've hurt, and every connection they've sabotaged, but they've convinced themselves that this emotional load doesn't exist. They live in a state of perpetual emotional constipation where feelings build up internal pressure without any healthy outlet for release. The first hidden pain that destroys avoidance from within is the crushing weight of their own emotional dishonesty. Deep down, they know they're living a lie. They present themselves as independent, self-sufficient, and emotionally stable, but internally, they're aware that their entire persona is constructed to avoid vulnerability. This constant performance of emotional strength while feeling internally fragmented creates a cognitive dissonance that eats away at their sense of authentic self. Every day, the avoidant must maintain the exhausting charade of not needing anyone while simultaneously feeling desperately lonely and disconnected. They've become so skilled at convincing others that they don't need emotional support that they've also convinced themselves, creating a prison of isolation that becomes increasingly difficult to escape. The energy required to maintain this false self is enormous and leads to chronic emotional and physical exhaustion that they can't explain or address, because acknowledging it would require admitting their entire approach to relationships is fundamentally flawed. The second form of hidden suffering involves their relationship with their own memories. While you might think avoidants simply forget about past relationships and move on, the reality is that they carry vivid, painful memories that they've buried beneath layers of rationalization and denial. They remember every moment of genuine connection, every time they felt truly seen and understood, and every instance where they chose fear over love. These memories don't fade, they become internal monuments to what they've lost and what they're incapable of sustaining. The avoidant experiences what I call phantom limb syndrome for relationships. Just as an amputee might feel pain in a limb that's no longer there, the avoidant feels the absence of connections they've severed. They carry the emotional imprint of every person they've pushed away, but they've learned to interpret these feelings as anything other than grief or loss. They might call it relief or claim they're better off alone, but the persistent ache of disconnection never truly disappears. This phantom pain becomes particularly intense during moments of genuine happiness or success. When good things happen in their lives, the avoidant automatically wants to share these moments with the people they've pushed away, only to remember that these connections no longer exist because of their own actions. This creates a bittersweet quality to every positive experience, where joy is immediately followed by the recognition of their own isolation. The third layer of hidden pain involves their relationship with their own capacity for love. Avoidants don't lack the ability to love, they possess it in abundance, which makes their self-imposed isolation even more torturous. They feel love deeply and intensely, but they've learned to fear this feeling more than anything else because it threatens their carefully constructed sense of safety and control. This creates an internal war between their natural desire for connection and their learned patterns of self-protection. Living with the knowledge that you're capable of deep love while simultaneously being terrified of expressing it creates a unique form of emotional purgatory. The avoidant experiences love as both a beautiful gift and a dangerous threat, leading to a constant internal struggle between approach and avoidance. They torture themselves with what-if scenarios, imagining how different their lives could be if they were brave enough to embrace vulnerability while simultaneously reinforcing the walls that keep them safe from that possibility. This love-fear paradox manifests in their daily lives as a constant state of emotional ambivalence. They find themselves simultaneously drawn to and repelled by opportunities for connection. They might start conversations with new people, but sabotage them before they develop into meaningful relationships. They engage in surface-level interactions while yearning for deeper connections, creating a cycle of approach and withdrawal that leaves them feeling frustrated and unfulfilled. The fourth hidden pain emerges from their awareness of the hurt they've caused others. Contrary to popular belief, avoidants are acutely aware of the pain they inflict on their partners. They see the confusion, the hurt, the desperate attempts to understand and connect, and they feel terrible about causing this suffering. However, they've learned to suppress their empathy and guilt because acknowledging these feelings would require them to change their behavior, which feels impossible and terrifying. This suppressed guilt creates a constant undercurrent of self-loathing that the avoidant carries with them. They know they're hurting people who care about them, but they feel powerless to stop the cycle of emotional withdrawal and rejection. This powerlessness leads to a deep sense of self-contempt that they rarely acknowledge or address. They begin to see themselves as fundamentally flawed and incapable of healthy relationships, which reinforces their belief that pushing people away is actually protecting them from future disappointment. The weight of accumulated guilt from multiple relationships creates what I call emotional debt. The avoidant carries the burden of every heart they've broken, every person they've disappointed, and every connection they've destroyed. This debt compounds over time, creating an internal sense of being fundamentally bad or wrong that colors every aspect of their lives. They begin to believe they don't deserve love or happiness, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that keeps them trapped in patterns of self-sabotage. The fifth layer of hidden suffering involves their relationship with their own mortality and the passage of time. As avoidants age, they become increasingly aware of how their fear of vulnerability has cost them meaningful connections and life experiences. They watch their peers build families, create lasting friendships, and develop deep romantic partnerships while they remain on the sidelines, protected but profoundly alone. This awareness of time's passage creates a growing sense of urgency and panic that the avoidant struggles to acknowledge. They realize that their strategy of emotional self-protection has actually stolen years of potential happiness and connection from their lives. The recognition that they've wasted precious time avoiding the very experiences that make life meaningful creates a deep existential crisis that they're often unprepared to handle. The fear of dying alone becomes increasingly prominent as avoidants mature and witness the natural losses that come with aging. They watch parents, friends, and loved ones pass away while acutely aware of their own isolation and the bridges they've burned. This confrontation with mortality often triggers late-life crises where avoidants desperately attempt to reconnect with people they've pushed away, only to discover that many of these relationships are beyond repair. The sixth form of hidden pain involves their relationship with their own potential. Avoidants are often highly intelligent, creative, and capable individuals who recognize that their emotional limitations are preventing them from reaching their full potential in all areas of life. They see how their fear of vulnerability affects not just their relationships, but their career advancement, creative expression, and personal growth. The awareness of their own unrealized potential creates a constant sense of frustration and self-limitation that eats away at their confidence and self-esteem. They know they're capable of more, but feel trapped by their own psychological patterns. This creates a form of learned helplessness where they stop trying to grow or change because they believe their limitations are permanent and insurmountable. This stunted potential manifests in their professional lives as well. Many avoidants struggle with leadership roles, collaborative projects, and career advancement because these opportunities require the kind of emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills they've spent their lives avoiding. They watch less capable colleagues advance while they remain stuck in positions that don't challenge them or utilize their full range of abilities. The seventh layer of hidden suffering emerges from their relationship with their own bodies and physical health. The constant stress of emotional suppression takes a severe toll on the avoidant's physical well-being. They experience chronic tension, digestive issues, sleep problems, and a suppressed immune system as their body tries to process emotions that their mind refuses to acknowledge. This mind-body disconnection creates a cascade of health problems that the avoidant struggles to understand or address. They might develop chronic pain conditions, autoimmune disorders, or other stress-related illnesses without recognizing the connection between their emotional suppression and their physical symptoms. The body keeps the score even when the mind refuses to acknowledge the game being played. The avoidant often develops unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage their suppressed emotions, including workaholism, substance abuse, compulsive behaviors, or addictive relationships with food, exercise, or technology. These coping strategies provide temporary relief but ultimately compound their problems by creating additional layers of shame and self-destruction. The eighth hidden pain involves their relationship with their own children and family legacy. Avoidants who become parents often struggle with the recognition that they're passing their emotional limitations on to the next generation. They watch their children develop similar patterns of emotional withdrawal and relationship difficulties, creating a generational cycle of emotional dysfunction that fills them with regret and helplessness. The desire to be a good parent conflicts with their learned patterns of emotional distance, creating an internal struggle between their love for their children and their inability to provide the emotional connection those children need. They recognize that their own childhood experiences shaped their avoidant patterns, but they feel powerless to break the cycle and give their children something different. This awareness of their impact on future generations creates a deep sense of responsibility and failure that haunts many avoidants. They realize that their emotional limitations don't just affect their own lives, but have ripple effects that extend far beyond their immediate relationships. The weight of this generational impact becomes increasingly heavy as they witness the consequences of their emotional unavailability in their children's lives. The ninth layer of suffering emerges from their relationship with their own spirituality and sense of meaning. Many avoidants struggle with feelings of spiritual emptiness and existential meaninglessness because they've cut themselves off from the connections that typically provide life with purpose and significance. They feel disconnected not just from other people but from something larger than themselves. This spiritual isolation creates a profound sense of emptiness that material success or individual achievements cannot fill. The avoidant might excel in their career, accumulate wealth, or achieve recognition in their field, but these accomplishments feel hollow without meaningful relationships to share them with. They live in a constant state of existential hunger, that they cannot satisfy through external means. The search for meaning becomes increasingly desperate as avoidants age and confront the reality of their isolation. They might turn to religion, philosophy, or spiritual practices in an attempt to fill the void left by their absence of human connection, but these pursuits often feel empty without the foundation of authentic relationships to support them. The 10th and perhaps most devastating hidden pain involves their relationship with their own death and legacy. As avoidants contemplate their mortality, they confront the terrifying reality that they may die without ever having been truly known or loved by another person. They face the possibility that their entire existence will leave no meaningful impact on the world because they've systematically destroyed every relationship that might have created lasting significance. This confrontation with meaninglessness creates an existential terror that the avoidant struggles to face. They realize that their strategy of emotional self-protection has actually guaranteed the very abandonment and insignificance they were trying to avoid. The recognition that they've created their own worst-case scenario through their defensive patterns creates a level of despair that is difficult to comprehend. The fear of being forgotten combines with the recognition of missed opportunities to create a sense of life regret that can be overwhelming. The avoidant sees clearly how their choices have led to their current isolation and recognizes that many of the people they've pushed away would have provided the love, support, and meaning they've been seeking all along. Understanding these hidden layers of pain doesn't excuse avoidant behavior or suggest that you should wait for someone to heal from their emotional wounds. Instead, this knowledge should help you recognize the full scope of what avoidance truly costs and why it's so important to protect yourself from becoming collateral damage in someone else's internal war. The avoidance pain is real, profound, and largely self-inflicted, but it doesn't change the impact of their behavior on others. You cannot heal someone who refuses to acknowledge their wounds, and you cannot love someone out of patterns they're not willing to change. The tragedy of avoidant attachment is that it creates suffering for everyone involved while solving none of the underlying problems it was designed to address. If you're dealing with an avoidant person in your life, remember that their hidden pain doesn't minimize your own suffering or obligate you to accept unacceptable behavior. You can have compassion for their internal struggle while still maintaining firm boundaries about what you will and won't tolerate in your relationships. Understanding their pain might help you process your own experience, but it should never be used to justify staying in situations that are harmful to your well-being. The most loving thing you can do for both yourself and an avoidant person is to refuse to enable their patterns of emotional withdrawal and self-destruction. By maintaining your standards and refusing to accept breadcrumbs of connection, you force them to confront the reality of their choices and the cost of their behavior. This confrontation is often necessary for any real change to occur, though it's important to remember that change must come from within and cannot be forced from the outside. The hidden pain of avoidant attachment serves as a powerful reminder that emotional walls designed to protect us often become the very prisons that destroy us. The avoidant suffering is a testament to the fundamental human need for connection and the devastating consequences of denying that need. Their pain is invisible but real, hidden but profound, and ultimately self-perpetuating until they find the courage to choose vulnerability over safety and connection over control.